I love teams. I grew up playing sports. I was a soccer player and I was a football player. In high school, for game days, I was excited. Not because I was going to necessarily play a whole lot. 5'6" defensive backs at big public high schools in Florida don't necessarily tend to see the field a huge amount. But mostly because it was a time to be together with my teammates. And I knew that regardless of how much I was going to see the field, I was going to get to wear my jersey to school. Me and my teammates would be immediately identifiable to the other students. And even if they were ambivalent at best about the football team, it was something that united us and set us apart on that day. When I was reading this week's Parashat, this is Parashat Tetzaveh, I thought a lot about uniforms. This Parashat deals significantly with Aaron's clothes. On one hand, of course, there's an expectation that uniforms make us the same. They are something that people are wearing to be similar. But of course, there's also uniforms that set different groups of people apart. This week, in more than 40 verses, that's a lot of this Parashat, the Torah describes the Bigdei Kodesh, the holy clothes. Aaron and his sons are commanded to wear extremely particular, extremely detailed clothes when they come before Adonai. It's clear just from the descriptions that these would have been beautiful. And given everything that's attached to them, probably heavy. And of course, they marked the Kohanim as a separate group, the only group trusted to enter the tabernacle, to intercede on behalf of the Israelites. Obviously, I understand the purpose of uniforms in sports and in the military and in marching bands even though I think marching band uniforms are silly. No offense to anybody in this room who was, in fact, I'm now seeing offended faces, so my apologies. Not really, they're silly. But in this context, I was a little bit confused at first about why the Torah spends more than 40 verses going into the detail about these clothes. After spending so much time last week talking about the ark, it seems that we're entering a period of extreme detail, and we need to make sense of why. Why does the Torah care so much about what the Kohanim are wearing? As in most things, Ramban has an answer. And his argument was that the priests' clothes did not only add to their status, marking them apart as the group of the wandering Israelites who were allowed to go into the tabernacle, but also they raised the honor and esteem of the divine one whom they served. These, of course, weren't the everyday clothes that Aaron and his sons would have worn. They were specific for a unique purpose that was for times when they needed to enter the tabernacle. And so, of course, this prompted me to think, what equivalents in our lives do we have to wearing specific clothes to show honor, or specific ways of being, show honor to a specific circumstance? Well, first of all, we dress up for important events. Looking around this room, it's clear that we dressed up for Shabbat. Most people are not necessarily wearing the clothes they wear every day. I was at a wedding this last weekend, and my son was very excited to be wearing 3 shirts. He was the ring bearer in the wedding. He was very excited to be wearing 3 shirts. It was actually a shirt, a vest, and a jacket, but it was 3 shirts. Fine. This is too easy. It's too obvious to talk about formal clothes. I'm talking about, how do we, in our own lives, show honor and respect to our surroundings? And one of the things that I was really thinking about, and it's something that I know along with most of you in this room struggle with, is how we give each other our full attention. How we are actively, not just actively listening like you perhaps learned in high school, but how we're really dialed in to what somebody else is saying. And one of the things that I've had to do, partially because, like I'm guessing all 20 plus of you in this room, I have a fairly significant cell phone addiction. When I'm having important conversations, especially important conversations with my wife, one of the things that I have taught myself to do is just to turn my phone over. My phone's usually on silent anyway, but to turn it over. I can't be distracted by an ESPN alert. Can't be distracted by my dad and brothers saying something ridiculous. I am fully giving my attention. It's not an all the time thing. Sometimes I would like the ESPN alerts, or sometimes I'm going back and forth with my dad and brothers. But when a situation merits it, this is something that is a way I am consecrating my own situation. Not everything we do will be on par with Aaron communicating with Adonai. That seems to be a relatively unique situation. Not everything requires this level of adornment, requires this level of mindset. But as a metaphor, the Bigdei Kodesh, these holy clothes, do have significant application in our lives. Deep, meaningful connection, the kind that requires intent, the kind that requires giving specific attention, is sort of our modern day equivalent of Aaron and his sons dressing in the appropriate garb, becoming consecrated in the way that the Tanakh dictates. So they are appropriately clad to enter the tabernacle. I promised my wife I would use the word clad. Actually, she asked me if I wrote this specifically to use the word clad, and I did. As we enter another Shabbat of rest and rejuvenation. Everyone else hears that, right? Okay, cool. I want us all to reflect on the ways in which we wear our metaphorical clothes. Metaphorically, we are donning these Bigdei Kodesh, behaving and acting in some small way like Aaron and his sons. And may we be intentional and focused in our interactions with each other. Shabbat Shalom.